do you kill the child? In D&D, of course. I just kind of wanted to talk about the semi-common occurrence of monster children or other situations involving the children of your foes in Dungeons and Dragons. That is the fictional role-playing game. Let there be no confusion. The first and most common occurrence is, of course, the raiding of a goblin or orcish lair you find their young. And this is where I ask, do you spare the children? I have, as a player, indulged in the slaughter of goblins. It will always be the most pragmatic choice because you are removing a future threat, but what is our morality here? I think it's fair to start with the most important point. Are they inherently evil, or is this just a specific evil tribe of goblins? In almost any game I run, they will be inherently evil, with the only exceptions being if a player before the game specifically requested to play as a goblin, or for some reason I'm feeling really into subversion. In these situations, it is always okay to kill the child, because it will always try to work evil in the world. Unlike, say, the baby Hitler, where you are punishing for crimes that haven't yet been committed, this is more like removing a wasp's nest to avoid an active danger. This is probably the simplest of the kill a child questions. Next, let's say they aren't inherently evil, but this tribe chose evil. Do you kill them then? Well, the question is, I guess, do you have somewhere to place them? It's a heavy resource drain, and you have no clue if they are the type to plan a future revenge kill. If you're in a setting with a lot of churches, you're probably in luck. If not, you can check NPCs, but all in all, it's a lot of trouble. That said, if we aren't playing them as inherently evil, this is the equivalent of discovering a human child in a bandit camp, and I don't think it's unreasonable to conclude sparing them is the most moral thing to do, even if it's a massive pain. That's how moral things tend to be. Your characters isn't necessarily moral, but if you got a paladin oath or something, it's worth keeping in mind. Additionally, I used to read D&D Reddit stories, and while I'm sure most of them are lies, don't represent the average group, or are incredibly twisted retellings of something that might have maybe actually occurred, I have noticed players killing monsters the DM wants to not actually be evil is somewhat common among those. So DMs, if you present it as a monster, don't be surprised when it's attacked as a monster. I know, silly thing to say. I also was planning to do a corrupt noble segment for this, but it's more or less the same. Escaped noble children are a danger to whoever you placed on the throne. They can lead an uprising. But you can't just dish out justice for crimes that haven't occurred. It is also worth noting you could use the children as hostages, but I wouldn't bet on an evil group respecting traditional hostage rules. But what about our non-intelligent creature? Let's say you find a basilisk and at the end you find an egg. Do you squish it or claim it? In D&D, it is possible to tame a basilisk if raised from birth, but it's a very active danger if it's not fully under your control. You could sell it, but then who knows what madman you just gave a basilisk. It's a very deadly weapon. Do you want that in circulation? Or, right now, you could step on the egg, remove the world of this danger before anything bad can happen. Unlike before, I'm not going to declare a option here being moral. It's just you choose to handle it or you don't. Just think about your character. Does he want a basilisk as a pet/tool? Would he be able to train it? Would he take the appropriate precautions to prevent it from hurting others? You can't be negligent when the price of such lapses in judgment is a person's life being locked into stone. There is also the matter of affording a monster pet. For example, let's say you get a young owlbear and keep it controlled enough to travel with your party. This is a surprisingly common occurrence, between the owlbear being iconic and parties being weirdly down to capture any and all Pokemon. So how much does this cost? Well, I saw a not unreasonable estimate of 9 gold pieces a day. I believe it was in Icewind Dale. This was based on the cost of 3 pigs, each of which are 3 gold pieces, for 3 meals a day. But that didn't feel right, so I ended up Googling how many calories bears eat because I do think bears are the most appropriate comparison. Turns out they consume around 20,000 calories a day. According to a random estimate of questionable reliability, I used Quora, a 250-pound pig can have around 15,000 calories. Taken at face value and assuming you can take some steps to prevent rot, this moves you down to about 3 gold pieces a week for your pet. Assuming, of course, you don't go through enough of your local pork industry that prices get driven up. And you would think I'm done, but this is also leaving out why bears eat 20,000 calories a day, and that is so that they can build fat and hibernate, which your pet is probably planning to do, which would be really inconvenient if you're using him as an active tool for your groups. Which means, yes, DMs, I just hand you a very realistic way to write owlbears out of the story. Thanks for listening to DM's ramblings. If you want to hear more, I talked about vegetarians fairly recently, and that was a fun one.